Hello everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we are going to be covering another grammar pattern, and the grammar pattern that we have is going to be a word plus the phrasing nai koto wa nai to mean, well, the definition actually kind of depends on what kind of word you're using, but the definition for the most part is going to translate to it's not that word, which is actually kind of confusing. So let's actually just jump into an example sentence from the get-go. So with our first example sentence here, we're going to be using this grammar pattern with a verb word. So our first line is going to read yasai wa tabenai koto wa nai ga suki janai nda. And so what this line is going to translate to is it's not that I don't eat vegetables, I just don't like them very much. So let's break down this sentence to get an idea of what this whole grammar pattern is doing here. First up, we have the word yasai, and this is just going to be the noun that translates to vegetables. Basically, we're going to mark it as the topic of this sentence with the particle wa right after it, so yasai wa. And now right here, we're going to jump right into our grammar pattern right here, because we're going to provide a verb, and this verb is going to be the verb taberu, which means to eat. And the verb is going to have to be in its negative nai form. So we're going to conjugate that. So taberu turns into tabenai, so that means not eat basically. And with it in this conjugated form now, we can now just insert our little phrasing, koto wa nai. And what this is going to do is it's going to change the meaning of basically to eat to it's not that I don't eat. So you can see how it's kind of working here with the double negative. First we conjugate taberu into tabenai, that's one negative. So to eat turns into not eat. Then we have the word koto right after that to kind of turn it into a noun that we can mark as the topic. So koto, then we have wa nai once again. And so then that second nai right there is going to add another negative. So taberu turns into not eat. Then we add another negative. So it's not that I not eat. It's not that I don't eat basically. So that kind of just naturally turns into I do eat or I can eat, depending on how you want to naturalize this particular sentence. And so there we have it. We're going to have this first part of the sentence be just simply I can eat vegetables, or it's not that I don't eat vegetables. Then we end the sentence with the very simple suki janai nda. And so of course suki is just gonna be like, but it's here in its negative form. So it's not like. And then we have that little n at the end to add kind of an explanation note, and then the da to end the sentence as a copula. So it's not that I don't eat vegetables, I just don't like them very much. So now we kind of know what this is literally meaning, what it's officially meaning, but let's just take a look at the little intricacies of why we would even use this grammar pattern as opposed to just saying I do eat vegetables or I can't eat vegetables. So a very big reason why you're going to be using this grammar pattern, or why people are going to be using it when you hear it, is because it serves as a kind of softening. And by that I mean it kind of is a soft affirmation. So consider this example sentence that we just did once again. It's not that I don't eat vegetables. We're going to kind of assume here, of course, that the context is that you were talking about vegetables, then the person who you're talking to said, what, you don't like vegetables? So you're going to invoke this grammar pattern then to affirm that you actually do eat vegetables, but you can see here that it's a soft affirmation, as in, yes, I do, but I'm not going to like retort what you just said to the point where I kind of express that I love vegetables, because I don't. So instead, I'm just going to say it's not that I don't eat vegetables, as opposed to just saying I do eat vegetables. And that's a much softer remark than responding with I do eat vegetables. And so you can see how the latter half of this sentence is going to be suki janai, which means I just don't like them very much. That is very in line with what the grammar pattern has kind of set up tonally. So we already knew that since you softened that by not saying straight up that you do eat vegetables, instead you said it's not that I don't eat vegetables, then you could kind of see that the next thing that you said was gonna kind of back that up with a yeah, I can eat them, or I do eat them, but I don't go out for them, or something along those lines. So that right there, the soft affirmation, is basically the whole point of this grammar pattern. So depending on the word that we use this grammar pattern with, a verb, an adjective, or a noun, the actual translation can differ. For example, if we use it with a verb, we can translate it to something along the lines of I can eat vegetables, which is pretty different from it's not that I don't eat vegetables. But when we use this grammar pattern with, say, an adjective or a noun, we're probably not going to say can noun or can adjective. It's going to be a different natural translation. But as long as you know that the whole point of this grammar pattern is to be kind of a soft affirmation, then you'll kind of get how each natural translation, depending on what kind of word you're using, turns out. So to convey that, let's actually do an example sentence where we're using an adjective instead of a verb with this grammar pattern now. Okay, so our next example sentence is going to be anime ga suki janai koto mo nai ga ima wa yoku minai. And so what this line will basically translate to is something along the lines of it's not that I don't like anime, I just am not currently keeping up with it. Okay, so if we break down this sentence, we're going to see that anime is just the first word that's just going to be anime. We have the particle ga because that's the particle we use when we use the ga ski grammar pattern, which means to like, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So right after ga we have ski, and this is going to be a non-adjective basically. So this is actually going to be the word that we're using this grammar pattern with, so this needs to be in its negative nai form. So we're going to add the janai right after ski to turn into the negative. So anime ga ski janai, and then we're going to add the little phrasing that we have for this grammar pattern and its construction. Koto wa nai. And so then that whole thing is going to turn into anime ga ski janai koto wa nai. So then what is that going to mean? Well, let's just refer back to that little double negative dynamic that we established already. So if we say ski, which means to like, we turn it into its negative nai form, so it's to not like. Then we add koto monai or koto wanai, that's going to be another negative, so it's going to be it's not that I don't like. Add the anime onto that, so it's not that I don't like anime. And so yeah, hopefully you can see how the effect of this grammar pattern is working here. It's the softening affirmation. So maybe someone asked him just now, what, you don't like anime? Well, he's now affirming that he does like anime, but he's softening that statement as to say, it's not that I don't like anime. Then now we know that what follows this is probably going to be something that kind of backs up that sentiment of, well, I don't hate anime, but I don't necessarily love it to the point where I'm obsessed over it as well. And so that's exactly what follows now in this example sentence. So we have the word ima, which just translates to now basically, and then we're going to mark this as a topic. So right now we have the phrasing yoku minai, and this is just going to mean yoku is going to be the adverbial form of the adjective yoi, which means good, so it basically turns into well, and then it's going to be modifying the verb miru, which means to watch, and that's going to be its negative form because I don't watch well. That sounds pretty weird directly translated, so we're going to naturalize that into I just don't keep up with it. So one more time, anime ga suki janai koto monai ga ima wa yoku minai. Alright, so hopefully you're getting a good idea of this grammar pattern. Let's go back to some example sentences with verbs, because that seems to be the more common word that this grammar pattern is used with. So let's get a bit more experience with that. For our next example sentence, we have kuruma o unten dekinai koto wa nai ga taitei jitensha o tsukau. This line here is going to translate to basically, it's not that I can't drive, or I can drive, but usually I just use my bike. Let's break down the sentence. First up, we have kuruma, which is going to be, of course, the word for car. We have the direct object particle o, marking as the direct object to the verb that's about to come, which is the verbal noun unten suru, which means to drive, to operate, to drive, basically. We're going to need this in its negative nai form, because this is going to be the verb that we're going to be using our grammar pattern with. But first, we're going to want to take the potential form of it to express the ability to do it, not just to do it. So instead of suru, we are going to change that into its potential form, which is dekiru, which of course means to be able to do, so to be able to drive. Then we're going to change that into its negative form, so dekiru turns into dekinai. So then unten dekinai is going to be to not be able to drive. We're going to slap on that phrasing now that we have everything in order. So koto wa nai, so unten dekinai koto wa nai is going to be it's not that I can't drive. If you want, you can just turn that into I can drive, but of course, again, the thing to note here with this grammar pattern, why it's being used is because it's supposed to be softer than just explicitly saying unten dekiru or I can drive. And of course, to reinforce that idea, we now move on with the rest of the sentence, and we get the second clause, which kind of elaborates on this kind of softened statement. So we have the particle ga, which is going to stand for but, and then we move on to our second clause, and that is taitei jitensha o tsukau. So taitei is going to translate to basically usually or generally. It's an adverb basically. We have the word jitensha, which means bicycle, and then we have the direct object particle o, marking as direct object, and then we have the verb tsukau, which means to use. So generally or usually, I just use my bicycle. And that, of course, is going to kind of be supportive of this idea of, well, it's not that I can't drive, but there's a reason why I don't do it a lot, basically. Alright, let's move on to our last example sentence, a line that's pretty longer than the ones that we've covered. So it reads, そのような苦しみを経験したことがありますから、あなたの気持ちがわからないことはありません. And so what this pretty long line is going to translate to is basically, I've gone through a similar hardship before myself, so I understand how you feel. So let's kind of break down the sentence. First up, we have sono, and this is going to translate to basically that. Then we have the grammar pattern that is the yo na, and this is going to be a grammar pattern that we've covered before, I believe. It's going to be used with a noun, basically. And the noun that we're using here is kurushimi, which is going to translate to basically hardship or difficulty. And so what sono yona is going to be doing to this noun is going to be basically a hardship like that. So yeah, yona is basically going to translate to like noun, and the noun that we're using here, of course, is hardship. So this is going to be kind of like a hardship like that. We have this whole phrasing, a hardship like that, marked as the direct object to the action that's about to occur. So we have the direct object particle o. Then we have our verb action, which is the verb keiken suru, which is a verbal noun. Keiken means experience, so keiken suru is going to be to experience, but this is going to be in its past form. So suru turns into shita, and then it's going to be in turn made a part of the grammar pattern that is the ta form of a verb plus the phrasing kota ga aru to mean to have done that verb before. So keiken suru turns into keiken shita koto ga arimasu, and that in turn is going to mean to have experienced before. Well, to have experienced what before? A hardship like that. So sono yona kurushimi o keiken shita koto ga arimasu is going to mean I have experienced a hardship like that before. That's going to be our first clause, and we're going to follow it with the word kara because that's going to basically be the conjunction because. Now we're going to move on to the second clause, which contains the grammar pattern of focus in this video. And we have first up anata no kimochi, which is going to translate to your feelings. So this is a noun of a noun modification going on here. Anata means you. No is the particle that we use to mark a noun of a noun modification. Then we have the word kimochi, which means feelings, basically. We're going to mark your feelings with the particle ga because that's the particle that we use when we're using the verb wakaru, which means basically to understand or to get. So anata no kimochi ga wakaru is going to be to understand your feelings. So wakaru is going to be the verb that we're going to be using with this grammar pattern here. So we're going to need it in its negative nai form. So wakaru turns into wakaranai. Now that it's conjugated properly, we can just slap on that phrasing koto wa nai. However, in this case, it's going to be koto wa arimasen because we're talking more polite. So the nai is going to be arimasen instead. And that's actually the whole sentence. So that second part right there, anata no kimochi ga wakaranai koto wa arimasen, is going to be we should know because we've covered enough example sentences with this grammar pattern. So this is going to be, it's not that I don't get your feelings. So kind of like to naturalize that, it's going to be I understand your feelings. Or if you want to keep that kind of literal translation with that nuance of softening affirmation, it's not that I don't get how you feel, something along those lines. So once again, sono yona kurushimi o keiken shita koto ga arimasu kara anata no kimochi ga wakaranai koto wa arimasen is going to be I've experienced a similar hardship myself, so I understand how you feel, basically. Alright, so that's going to wrap it up for our coverage of this grammar pattern, which is using any kind of word, basically a verb word or a noun word or an adjective word in its nai form, its negative form, plus the phrasing koto wa nai or koto mo nai, or maybe you want to be polite and arimasen instead of nai, but yeah. And so what is that going to mean? It's going to mean it's not that word. Depending on which kind of word you're using, it can translate naturally to can verb or not impossible to verb, or yeah. So hopefully you learned a lot from this lesson. This is a pretty basic grammar pattern, so do keep it in mind, and of course stay tuned for more grammar lessons on more grammar patterns because we got a lot to cover.